Okay, students, the purpose of this video is to show you how to draw the footings that I want them to be as part of the foundation plan construction document. And these footings are the details that I want to be drawn within that same document. So before we continue, we just need to understand what a footing is. I think we talked about that already on the foundation plan explanation video. But to draw the detail, we need to understand all these different components. So let's start from the top. We got the 2x4 sole plate. So the sole plate is really the bottom of the wall that we're going to be placing the the wall of the house. So that's what's called a sole plate. And if you look at the inside of the house, it's basically it's a 2x4, and it measures 2 inches by 4 inches in theory. But this is what's called a sole plate. That's what is going to be placed at the bottom of the wall of the house, and this is the one that's contacting the the top of the foundation and essentially being bearing weight on top of that footing. So that's what that sole plate is. The finished floor level, that is the level of the finished floor. You're listening to this video right now, you're sitting on a chair. The chair is on the floor. So if you look down, that's what that is. The floor is the finished floor level. Within the concrete, we have the 6x6 wire mesh. That wire mesh, this is rebar. So it's not, this footing in particular does not have rebar. It is going to have, and once again, this is post-tensioned cables. This is rebar. And this is your welded wire mesh. So that's what this is going to be for ours. Ours is going to have the 6x6 welded wire mesh. Okay. It is embedded within the concrete, so that's why it's kind of drawn within the really from the midpoint of the 4-inch thick concrete. I don't have a picture to show you, but underneath the concrete, for this detail, we're asking for a 6-inch layer of sand or gravel. It's just to stabilize the concrete and make it a little bit more stable. Underneath everything is just dirt. That's what this hatch pattern is here. As a matter of fact, it's called earth, which is a sophisticated name for dirt. So the earth hatch pattern is what we're going to use for our detail. And then the last thing that there's a few other things where even though we are using welded wire mesh throughout our footing, we are asking for a few strands of 4-inch diameter, 4 half-inch diameter rebar continuously throughout the footings. So we are asking for that to be placed within the footings, and you'll see that in a few of these pictures that I might show you. So there we go. We have some. If you can kind of look down here at the level of the footings, we're asking for some rebars to be placed under there. Except the rest of our footing is not going to foundation is not going to be reinforced with rebar. It is going to be reinforced with wire mesh. Okay. Last but not least, it's this additional line. Now, this one does have a little gap between there. The only reason we have the little line, a gap between this line and the edge of the concrete, is just to show that we have an additional layer of something being drawn in. And what is that? It's a vapor-proof membrane. So we're asking between the earth and the footing and the concrete of the footing and foundation to have a line of vapor-proof membrane. So what is vapor-proof membrane? It's actually a fancy term. It's really nothing very sophisticated other than it just being plastic. So that's all it is. So we're just asking for plastic. So this plastic layer is what we're asking to be placed between the earth, which is underneath this plastic, and the footings, and really the whole thing between the footing and the foundation. Just the whole thing is going to have a layer of plastic throughout. Okay. So that's what this vapor-proof membrane means. Now, essentially, the concrete is going to be placed right up against the plastic. So it's going to be right at the edge, but we can't draw it right on top of this line because you won't see it. So on the detail, we're just going to offset it a little bit just to indicate to the person building this thing that we are asking for a layer of vapor-proof membrane on that footing. Okay, we have our dimensions, sizes, and we have everything we need to start drawing up our footing detail. So how are we going to do that in AutoCAD? A couple of things. The first thing I want to do is I want to consider some layers. So we already had some new layers that I created that I asked you to create, which was our foundation layer, and footings. That's what these are. This is our foundation layer here and our footings. So those have been drawn. The other two layers that I want us to use is object lines, because we're going to draw just a separate detail. This is what's called a detail view. The detail view, of course, is of the footing. So for the footing, we're going to draw these as object lines. And as far as the hatch pattern or any other details that we want, we're going to use that for our concrete hatch pattern and our earth hatch pattern and our sand hatch pattern. Okay. So we're going to draw up that footing detail. We're going to draw it in model space. We're not going to draw it in paper space, even though we are going to make a viewport of it off to the side. So we're going to make a separate viewport for just our detail, but we are going to draw it in model space just off to the side somewhere. So the first thing I need to do is I need to create those layers. So the layers I need to create, it's object lines. And let me, object lines, I'm asking for color 112. So I'm just going to type in 112. I can look for it, but I don't know where it's at. So color number 112 for object lines, and then we need to make another layer called hatch. And hatch, I'm going to ask for that one to be magenta. Okay. I'm going to start drawing object lines. I'm going to make that current and start drawing some lines. So as far as the footing, this line is representing the top of the finished floor, but it just kind of continues all the way through. And that's what this is. This is what's called a long break line. It's part of our alphabet of lines that we learned on the second week of school. So we're just going to draw it and like a squiggly line, just to indicate that this actually continues for a long, long distance. How long? The whole foundation. Okay. So we're just going to draw it, and there is no particular length on this one. It's just as long as it's long enough to be able to put in all these text and annotations. I'm going to go in there and just draw, I don't know, roughly maybe about 2 feet or so, 2.5 feet. It's going to come down this way 2 feet, like this way 1 foot. Up this way, I don't know yet, but I do know that the top of the footing is 4 inches. The foundation is 4 inches. And then it doesn't give us really a straight dimension from here other than it's a 6-inch gravel fill. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw this little 45 structural member at 6 inches. So I'm just going to go over here and offset 6 inches here this way, and then draw myself a line for that intersection, and do some trimming. I'm going to probably stretch these to be a little bit longer. There we go. Now, this could work, but if it confuses you, I'm going to go ahead and mirror it because it's a mirror image. But that way I don't confuse you. I'm just going to go ahead and mirror it. Technically, it doesn't really matter. It's really the same detail. Nothing really changes. And then the next thing I'm going to draw, it's the vapor-proof membrane. Now, I need to give myself a little bit of a gap there so I can see the vapor-proof membrane. So I'm going to offset it. Let's try 1/2 inch. I think that'll work. 1/2 inch all the way around. Using my fillet with a radius of 0, I'm going to square these off. Then I'm going to come back and add the 1 foot. The ground level is 1 foot from the bottom, and then we have our 6-inch gravel fill. Now notice it is kind of squiggly because this is dirt. Dirt is not perfect. You can't make dirt nice and straight. So we are going to have to make that a little bit squiggly. And so is the same thing with the ground. The ground is not a perfectly flat surface. It's got little hills and stuff. So we're just going to draw that, just to make it look a little bit more real. I'm going to go ahead and draw that still using my object lines layer. And the way I'm going to do that is just use a polyline. And I'm going to start at the 6-inch mark here. Actually, I should probably start it from this point. And then just kind of draw it. Again, it doesn't have to be super perfect because it is dirt. You want it to look like that just a little bit, pretty much like how our detail looks like. And 1 foot from the bottom or the top, same thing. I'm going to draw that one polyline Start nearest from here, and same thing, just kind of, it's dirt, so it's not perfectly flat like a pancake. And then erase this one. Okay. The vapor-proof membrane ends at that point. So I guess I should have extended that one to the footing. So let me do that. There we go. And then trim the membrane. All right. That should pretty much match all my object lines. Okay. The wire mesh. That's within the concrete. So half of 4 inches is 2 inches. That should be the same spacing from the edge over here. So we'll just go with 2 and 2 all the way around to draw in that wire mesh. So I'm going to offset it 2 inches on the edges. Okay. And extend this guy. All right. Now, as far as the layer for the wire mesh, I think we're going to go ahead and put that under the hatch layer, but it is going to be hidden. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to be under the hatch layer, but I don't want to change the whole line type for hatch. I'm just going to change that one over to, and force that one to be hidden. That way it shows it as the mesh. Now, here's another trick, another AutoCAD technique that I can show you. Notice that the hidden pattern here is a little bit smaller. So I can actually adjust the line type scale of just that one line type. I can go here to properties, right click properties, and change the line type scale here individually to be even smaller. So let's go with maybe a 0.5. I think that looks a little bit better. So notice that the pattern is a little bit different. This is hidden too, but so is this one, but I just made the line type scale a little bit smaller for this one. Once again, to try to match that exhibit. I could probably even go smaller than that if I wanted to, but I'll let you decide on that one. I'm going to draw in the rebar. That is a continuous 4.5 half-inch diameter. So I'm just going to use the donut command, just like I talked about a little while ago, with a 0 inside diameter of 0 and outside diameter of 0.5, because it is half-inch diameter, and draw in those little dots for the 4 continuous rebars, because they're asking for 4. I'm also going to put those under the hatch layer. Okay. Asking for 4, so we're going to put in those as part of the hatch layer. Okay. Let's draw in our squiggly line here. That's part of the dimensions. So I'm going to go ahead and change over to my dimensions layer. Oh, the sole plate, 2x4 sole plate. We do need to draw that in. So we're going to draw that one at 2 inches, offset 2 and 4. It is an object, so I'm going to leave it as an object. The only thing I'm going to draw is the little X across here. And I'm going to change that over to hatch, just to indicate that that's the edge of the sole plate. Okay. I think that's pretty much everything I need for my object. The rest will be annotations and hatch patterns. Okay. So let me show you how to draw in the hatch patterns. Now here, once I draw this one, this will give us an edge, because whenever we draw a hatch pattern, we're going to pick a point inside the area that we want to hatch, and it needs to be completely enclosed. So we'll have this cut plane, a long cut line here to give us the pattern. But here we don't have an edge for this one. So I'm just going to draw one in temporarily for the earth hatch pattern and then erase it once I'm done. Okay. So let me draw in that long break line. I draw it as just a regular polyline, and I'll place it in the right location here in a little bit. Come down this way. And there's nothing magical about it, just as long as it looks kind of like, let's go perpendicular to this one and then straight down. That way these two line up. Don't worry, you'll be able to watch this video a little later if you get lost. I'm going to move it into place. Trim. Okay, and then that one is part of my dimensions, so I'm going to put that under my dimensions layer. I just need to have an area to fill in for my hatch patterns because I need to put in this pattern for the concrete and this one for the sand. So I'm going to switch over to my hatch layer and I'm going to start hatching. That sounds weird. Hatch this area and this one, but I need to change my pattern. So that one is architectural concrete. And there you go. Architectural concrete hatch. Starting to look like a footing detail. Sand, we're going to be in this little layer here. So we're going to hatch this one here, but I'm going to switch over my pattern. And that's why we have AR, because these are meant for architectural use. Architectural sand. Click that one there. I think that looks pretty good. And then we need the earth, which is this guy down here. So the only thing is I can't hatch that one. It won't let me because there is no defined boundary. We need to have one. So I'm going to temporarily draw myself a defined boundary by just going in from this corner here. Kind of like nothing real fancy about it. I'm not sure what that red circle is. I think it happened when I did the hatch pattern a little while ago. Hatch. Now I'm going to go look for that earth pattern. There it is. And here, and you can obviously see it's way too small. So we need to adjust our scale. So if we try a 48, that's a scale factor here that's too big. So we just kind of fish around for a number that makes it look somewhat like our exhibit. Probably go a little smaller. So let's try maybe 15. And then you want to be exact. We need to change the angle. The angle looks like to me as probably a 45. So I'll change that to 45. Enter. Okay. Looks like little wings. I just needed these temporarily. I don't need them at the end. I just need to draw them in for the hatch pattern. Okay. Now we need to start putting in dimensions. I'm not going to put all of them. I just want to show you a few things that we need to do. This is what the problem is. We have dimensions already. They're there. Okay, but look at what's going to happen here is once I start placing these dimensions, for example, let me place this one here that says 4 inches and 6 inches. Let me place this one here of 4 inches from here to here. And notice how big the text is. So we got a problem in that it's just too big. It's too big. So then really the thing that we need to do is we need to figure out the scale first. So I'm going to go back to paper space. And I'm going to go and create a new viewport. MB for model view. Create a viewport. And we need to set this one to scale. Now, what scale do I want? Well, let's find something that looks nice. We don't want to use the 1/4 inch equals a foot. That's way too small. I want a nice bigger scale to fill in this area. So let's go look for a bigger scale. Let's try 1/2 inch equals a foot. I think it could go even bigger than that. 3/4 of an inch equals a foot. There we go. I think that'll be a nice scale. Okay. So now we have 3/4 of an inch equals a foot. Let me lock it. But look at the size of this text. So if you notice, all this text should be the same size. And it's different. So you look at this text in this dimension and this one, it's different. So we need to do something to fix that because in model space, it's the same, but we are using 2 different scales in paper space. And we need to leave it at that. We can't just change it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our dimension styles. We already have our architectural dimension style that we used. That one was set at a scale factor of 48, but 3/4 of an inch equals a foot is a different scale factor. The 3/4 of an inch equals a foot is a scale factor of 16. So I'm going to make a new dimension style. So from my arch dimension style, I'm going to make a new one. It's going to make a copy of that one. I'm going to start with that one. because it's already been set up. So I'm going to change this one, and I'm going to name it something that makes sense. Arch 16. That way I know this is my 16 scale factor that I'm going to use. Continue. And really the only thing that's going to change, everything stays exactly the same with the exception of the scale factor. The scale factor needs to be 16. So then this is the one I'm going to use specifically for this detail. So now that I'm using my arch 16, I'm going to go place my dimensions, and they are a lot smaller. I don't like that. Let me see if I can fix that in a little bit. From here to here. Oh, I didn't pick the exact 6 inches, so I'm going to have to edit that text, which I don't like to do. We can do that here also. Just edit the text. Okay. So once again, you can kind of see that the text is smaller than this one, yet in paper space, it's the same size. That's what we need to achieve. That's what we need to achieve. Okay. Don't forget to change your scales, your layers also on the viewports. Very nice. Multi-layers, same concept. You're going to finish the rest of it. The multi-layer is the same concept in that we're going to go back to our architectural multi-layer, but once I place a multi-layer with a note, for example, finish floor level, when I go to my multi-layer and I place it, we're going to have the same issue. Finish floor level, in that the text is too big. Okay? So it is the concept of the scale factor. Once again, you can kind of see the text is huge compared to everything else. So to fix that is we're going to have to go and make another multi-layer style. We already created a separate one for the dot, so now we need to make another one for my multi-layer. Continue, and then that one stays the same with the exception of our scale factor. Use that one, set current, and then this one, as long as it's my correct multi-layer style, will look a lot better. The text looks way smaller in model space, yet in paper space, it's the correct size. Okay. I need you to continue doing that, but the thing is you need to do two views. Why? Because we have two details. We have this detail here, and then we also have this detail that needs to be drawn. It is different. So on your foundation plan, I need to eventually see two separate details. This is going to be the second one. This is going to be the first one that you need to draw. Okay, so we're going to place one here, and that'll finalize our foundation plan and footing details.